Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Welcome to Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts. Phil Putney and myself back to talk investing, finance, retirement, and ready or not, here it comes.
Ready
and
or
that's
not.
Retirement.
Yep. So sometimes that's the case. Ready or not, here it is.
It's coming. I mean, you think about it. It's a good thing. Like,
Right.
It means you've lived long enough. It's coming, right? So you didn't pass away early. That's good, right? That's
Yeah.
positive. But you got to plan for it because it's happening, right? You're going to age.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in September already here, Phil. I believe this is our last week of August, one of the two. Whenever we're taping this, I'm getting all confused with my dates. But I mean, the year has just been chucking by, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I always talk to clients about that retirement and I mean, how quickly it sneaks up. And think back to when you had kids, you have kids and you go through these various stages and before you know it, they're graduating high school and in college and then married. And now you get, I mean, it's just, how did this happen? I'm not that old. What happened?
Yeah. My wife she takes these things way too. She's like, don't tell me that. So I saw a funny little meme that said, thinking about the movie Back to the Future. And it was like, he goes back from 1985 to 1955, right? So he goes back 30 years. And it's like, so if that was to take place today, it would be 1993. And that's the year she graduated high school. And she was like, ugh.
Yeah, don't want to do that.
She's like, I graduated 30 years ago. And I was like, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Can't
be.
So,
there's no way.
Yeah, pop culture has a really interesting way of doing that. Some of our favorite movies or songs or something, we'll see something and it's like, this song came out 40 years ago and you're like, wow, that makes me feel old, right? So ready or not,
it's coming
because time is moving. Right. So that's going to be our topic this week. So let's talk a little bit about some things to ponder when we're thinking about the fact that it's coming down the pike. This train's a coming, right? So there's a lot of people who reach retirement age, and I'm going to break this into just really kind of three major questions that don't want to retire. You're kind of one of them, for example, right? So do you find that it's usually because A, they enjoy your job, which is the case for you, or is it a defense mechanism? And I think that's more often the case because they're not sure if they can retire.
Yeah. So I guess the first thing is, what is retirement, right? Because I mean, retirement is, to me, too often tied to an age. Everyone thinks of it, by 65 or by whatever it is, that's retirement. No, I mean, to me at least, and when I have this discussion with clients, to me is retirement is the age at which basically you're financially independent, meaning work now is an option. That's retirement. Doesn't mean you have to, it just means you can, right? So you're now working on your own terms.
Here's a thought. It's like the movie Shane, since we're talking about pop culture and stuff. Remember the movie Shane? So there's a debate when he rides off into the sunset. Does he ride away in the sunset wounded or is he dead?
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
So which, does he live on, right? Because he rides away, or does he keep riding and he falls off the horse because he's dead? So kind of maybe an interesting, weird analogy for retirement, but it's like you have the option to wonder, like, which one's it going to be, right? Are you continuing to go or are you not going? It's like whatever you want to do, but at least you're financially able to make it happen. And
a lot of times that's really what people are after, right? That retirement isn't that I'm just done. And some people it is. Some people are just, they're done. They're, hey, when can I, I'm working with a client right now that's scenario. Her main question is, when can I retire? Can I do it like the first of the year? So, I mean, she's ready. She's burned out and it's just time, that's fine. Have that discussion with your advisor.
Did she come to you for that information though? Did she come to you to find out?
Yes.
Right.
And that was kind of her main focus of coming to me is, hey, I just want to know.
Do I have the data? Yeah. Or do I have the money?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So then that's a matter of running the math and building out a plan.
Okay.
Can she do that? In her case, absolutely, it's going to work. That is the discussion to have of, you can do it. Now, does that mean January 1st she's putting her notice in? I don't know. It's up to her.
Right.
But for a lot of clients, that's really what they need to know, because now they're working on their terms. And I mean, you probably heard this a lot along the COVID timeframe, but I had a lot of clients that we had planned on them retiring, that timeframe. It was worked out in the plan. That's when they were going to retire. But all of a sudden with the COVID lockdowns, everyone's working at home, remote work, all this. hey, I think I can do this a little longer. It's like, what
Yeah.
else am I going to do? I can't travel. I can't, so I'm going to continue to work.
Right. Right.
And
Pad the numbers.
yeah, they continued a couple more years just because it was easier, right? They didn't have the stress, they didn't have the commute, whatever it was. It was a much more manageable scenario.
So whatever side you're on, whether you're the I love my gig and I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can until my body says no,
Yeah.
or you hate your gig and you want to retire January 1st, right? Let's go with two sides of the coin. So we'll start with the first one here. So for those folks, no matter what your motivation is, but for those folks who are financially able to retire, but they lack the confidence to do so, what's some things to kind of ponder there or to think about, to get started on or try to track down so that you can get some confidence?
You have to have a plan, right? I mean, your confidence should be built on facts and numbers, right? You
Okay.
don't base it on the rule of thumb, right? I mean, 4%, I think, this, that, it's fuzzy math, it's going to work. No, I mean, run the math, run a real plan to say, here's what I need, make it reasonable. Don't, I don't want you living on house arrest in retirement. This is the bare minimum. What does it really look like for you to live in retirement? You know,
So don't say it's $3,500 a month when you know
right. I
that's
mean, if
not
you're
the case.
spending $8,000 a month right now, don't budget for in retirement because that's a major lifestyle change. Yeah, I mean, so doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's not going to look like you're doing today. Something has to change. So, so what does
Yeah.
it look like, and have the math then to run out to talk about all the aspects. When am I going to file for security based on that? Do I have a pension? What does that look like? Where's the money position?
What's the strategy between
Right.
the two of
What's the
us?
strategy between the two spouses? I've got money in these different tax buckets. When am I going to spend from which bucket? So what is your plan? Does it work? Do I have enough to get me comfortably, confidently through
Yeah.
retirement?
Yeah. I mean, she's 5 years younger than me or he's 12 years older than me or whatever. How does that play in? Right.
And I mean, that brings up a good point. Doesn't mean both spouses have to retire at the same time either. I mean, if
Right.
one spouse is just done, they're burned out, but the other spouse is maybe younger or not, and they're willing to or want to. I mean, I'm thinking of one couple right now that I've been working with them for going on 10 years, and he retired over 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan was for her to follow like a year or two later. She's still working. And it's not that they don't need the money financially. She could have retired
Right.
back when we planned easily.
Well, she obviously likes
her
what she's
job.
doing.
He loves gardening. That's his main hobby. So he's got very involved in,
Yeah.
gardening and that's great. So that brings up a good point. You have to understand what you're retiring from, but also what you're retiring to. What does that look like?
Yeah, and really the for married couples, you got to have those conversations between each other because that could have easily gone another way, right? He could have retired and she could have been resentful over it or whatever, So, we've covered that before on the show too, or vice versa.
Or vice versa. I mean, he could have retired and it's like, hey, look, we planned on retiring and doing all this travel. I'm aging here
And
I
you're
can't
working,
do this
yeah.
much longer, and you're still working.
Good point.
So, I mean, you have to have this discussion up front, but then on an ongoing basis too, between the spouses and the advisor to make sure everyone's on the same page and the plan gets adjusted along the way.
Okay, so I mean, if you've got the funds and you lack the confidence to retire comfortable or to retire not comfortably, but I think with that clarity,
Confidently, yeah.
I think with that clarity,
Clarity,
a lot of times it does come back to the folks don't have a strategy. They've saved well. They feel pretty
Right.
confident that they've got, maybe they do have a good Social Security, maybe they do have a pension, maybe they put away a decent nest egg, but there's something missing. And oftentimes it is not having a plan or a strategy to know they can spend the money the way they want to keep the lifestyle, and not run out and in case they live to be, 102 or something like that. So get a strategy, get a plan in place. That's going to give you that confidence to do whatever it is you need to do. Now, the other side of that coin, Phil, is the folks that would love to retire, but often can't because they aren't there yet.
Right.
And that's a tougher conversation for you to have to give, but I'd rather you give it to me straight so I can start working on it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's frankly, that's a harder discussion because if you're at that point of burnout, that's like, look, I've got to be done.
Well, you're January lady, right?
Right. In her case, it's fine. She's
good, but
accumulated
if
wealth.
she wasn't,
Right. She's very
Yeah.
conservative in her spending. I mean, she's not going to have a problem. But if she wasn't, that's a whole, and I've had that scenario where it's like, I'm done. I can't do this much longer, and they get into that discussion. Well, yeah, I'm spending 8, but I think I can live on 4 in retirement.
Okay, so how do you handle that? What
Hold
do you
on.
start?
Let's just step back for a second and really have that discussion. In that case, what I always recommend is, okay, great, you can live on 4. Start doing that
Let's
today.
try it.
If you can't, you don't want to find out, do you put your notice into your job and you're done and retired,
Right.
and you're 6 months into this thing thinking, this isn't going to work, I can't do this, what was I thinking? Well, it's too late then. Now you've cut the cord and you're going to have to, I mean, it's a different scenario.
Yeah, if you find yourself in that window where you're like, all right, we're going to cut it down so we can get retired sooner than we planned on because I hate it or whatever the case is. That's a really great tip, Phil, or how to prepare. Like, see if you can actually do it, because you may be like, woohoo, I can do this, and then great, then reevaluate. But then you might be like, to your point, you might be like, wow, this sucks.
Well, and for married couples, make sure you're both on the same page, because again, the same type of scenario. If you're thinking, I'm done, I can, we're going to cut down to 4 because I just can't do this anymore. But your spouse is like, what are you talking about? And we got to, stay at home and do nothing. No way. I want to go out and travel. I want to, so make sure you're having that right discussion. And that doesn't mean maybe you don't change jobs or do something different, right? It's not a yes or no. There's a lot of levers we can move, so to speak, right? So it doesn't mean maybe you don't change positions. Maybe retirement looks a little different. Maybe you do part-time work, just doing something different to supplement for a number. I mean, there's a lot of options and things you can do. But to your point, have a plan up front, number one. If it's going to require major changes, try it on for size and make sure both spouses are on the same page before you just jump into this.
I like that. Maybe we should, so that's the challenge this week on the podcast for folks. If you're checking it out and you find yourself feeling like that, you're in that spot, right, where you're like, I really would love to retire like soon, and being reasonable, right? Like if you're checking out the podcast and you're 42, you're probably not.
It's a much different
unless
time.
you're really, really
like
wealthy, in which case
of...
it doesn't matter. But like if you're, let's say, well, okay, I use my brother all the time as an analogy on the show, right? He just turned 65. He's being laid off from the company he's working at, and he's at that, I just go ahead and like to be done. I think his last day is in the middle of October here coming up soon. And they're, his severance and whatnot's going to carry him on a regular pay all the way into next year, but he's like, what do I want to do next year? And I was like, well, what do you want to do? He's like, I don't want to sit around and be bored. He's single, right? Yeah. So he's a single guy. And I said, well, then take a part-time job, right? I mean, because to your point, like with the couple where she kept working, he'll go stir crazy, right? So
right, just sitting at home watching, your favorite TV show. I mean, only so much of that you can do. So.
Yeah. I'm like, look, the pay is carrying you from October into January, just the leftover vacation and all that kind of junk, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, so there's your couple of months of just doing nothing. Enjoy that kind of down, nothing time, whatever I want to do. I got nowhere to be, no clock to punch, no blah.
Yep.
But then come January, if you're feeling pretty stir crazy, then that's when you can start reevaluating getting a second job.
Look for something different,
And unfortunately, because he's 65, he's not at full retirement age, right? So if he applies for Social Security, he's going to be getting that
reduction,
right. So he's like, well, I wonder. So he's kind of in that spot. And I said, well, if you do it and you have filed, then you can still make money, and part-time money works because you can make up to what, 21 grand, I think.
20, yep. Yeah, and that gets adjusted each year. So next year is probably going to be a little higher, but yeah.
So there's options,
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah. So again, it comes down to, in your brother's case, running that number, running the plan. What does this look like? What is Social Security? If I'm going to delay, well, where's that money going to come from then? Is it going to be part-time? Are there accounts I can spend early to get there? And that really is, have that plan. I mean, that's the biggest advice best advice I can give with it is, don't go into this blindly. Don't let your stress or dissatisfaction or just pure frustration with the job push you in the wrong direction and make a decision that might feel really good then, but 6 months, a year down the road, it's like, what was I thinking?
Right. I was going to say trying to change jobs at 50 versus 65 is a bit different. So, all right. Well, there you go. Well, ready or not, it's coming, right? So, biggest takeaway.
Yep, it's coming. Plan
clearly,
for it.
you got to have a strategy. It's why we do the podcast. It's why so many advisors across the country do radio shows or television shows or podcasts. A lot of it is sales oriented, and obviously we're going to encourage you to reach out to a professional like Phil, but it's also just to get people thinking like, hey, like sharing stories like some of Phil's clients he shared this week, me sharing my family stories or whatever, because if it's happening to one of us, it's probably happening to many of us, right? So
absolutely.
Get a strategy in place. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're living on a budget and all that kind of junk that people fear, but find out
the B word in retirement.
Right. Find out what it is that you have and how you're going to use it to the best of your possible ability so that you are at least armed with the data, right? And then you can make that decision on to work or not to work, right? We get a little Shakespearean. So,
and that brings up a great point. I mean, I always tell my clients, my role in the planning process is simply to give you, here's the fact, the pro and the con on each of these decisions. It's not my plan, it's yours. I'll give you the facts. I'll give you my opinion on what I would recommend, but you make that decision. So you have to have the facts to make the decision.
I'm gonna punch above my age here. Was it Joe Friday that said just the facts, ma'am?
Just the facts. Yep. Just the facts, man.
So there you go. So you're just giving the facts. So
give the facts to make an informed decision.
That's right. Exactly. So there you go. So ready or not, here it comes. Thanks for hanging out with us, folks. We always appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube as well. If you want to check it out in video form, you can do that also. And you can subscribe to us simply by stopping by Phil's website, which is philstaxhacks.com. There's lots of good information there. You can check out past episodes and subscribe to them. You can also just redirect around to his main website if you want to get on his calendar and have a conversation with him, or just call him at 248-888-7530. Numbers on the screen, 248-888-7530. Phil, my friend, thanks for hanging out, buddy.
Yep.
We'll see you next time. All right. Stay safe. Have a good week. Stay cool because it's supposed to be 101 today here where I'm at while we're taping this. So
it's hot here too. So
it's a little toasty. So have yourself a good week, folks. We'll see you next time here on Phil's Tax Hacks and other retirement facts.
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.